Hey, you're listening to Births at Home, the podcast hosted by me, Esmeralda, the Homebirth Doula. I am so excited for today's episode because it is episode number 1. I am officially launching my podcast. It has been a long time coming. I kept making excuses as to why I shouldn't do a podcast, that there's other podcasts that do essentially what I want to be doing on this podcast, and that there wasn't need for another one. But as someone who is obsessed with birth and is a birth worker and just a huge birth nerd, um, I found that there was never enough home birth stories for me to listen to when I would go and try to find one on podcasts. I had already listened to all of the other ones. I would try to search for new ones, and there weren't any. So I kind of found myself looking for that, even though there were already other platforms that kind of do that. But to me, there just weren't enough. And so I felt like if I'm feeling that way, there's possibly other women who are feeling the same way as well. They may be planning for a home birth, and it could be their third home birth or their fourth home birth. And this is a way that they use to kind of prep for their home births. But because they've already done this a few times, they've listened to all of the other home birth stories that are available, just like me. And so they're looking for more and can't find them. And that is exactly why I just decided I'm going to go for it and do my Home Birth Stories podcast, which is exactly what this is going to be, a podcast for all kinds of women to share their home birth stories with me and with you guys. So I hope you guys also enjoy hearing home birth stories as much as I do, because that is exactly what is going to be on every single episode after this. But for today's episode, I am going to kind of share a little bit about me and my background because I am the host of this podcast. So I would love it if all of my listeners kind of knew who I was a little bit and my background before getting further into other women's home birth stories. So, like I said, I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about me, and then I'll also get into my home birth stories today as well. So, a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Esmeralda. If you do not know me, I am a doula, and my doula business is called Births at Home, hence the name of the podcast, and my sweater as well, as you can see. My business is kind of all over the place. I run an in person doula and birth photography business. I also run online doula services. I have one on one consultations and coaching. I do mentorships, like group mentorships for home birth moms. And then I also run a shop online where I sell home birth apparel for home birth moms and also birth workers. And then I also have, like I said, a lot of aspects. I also have digital downloads that are like guides, birth affirmation cards, home birth certificates, a lot of different things. So you can kind of find anything home birth on my page. I'm mostly on Instagram. So if you don't follow me there, you should definitely go over and check it out. My handle is at Births at Home. And then you can also find all of these things on my website as well, which will be left down below. But if you won't check down there and you just want to know what it is right now, it is www.birthsathome.com. So you can find all of my services there, my whole shop there, everything that you need is all in one spot. So that's the doula business part of me. But a little bit about not the business side is that I am a mom of three. I have a boy and two girls. My son is going to be 5 soon. My middle child, my daughter, is going to be 3 very, very soon. And then my youngest daughter just turned 1 not too long ago. So I have all littles right now, and it's a very busy life with them because they are growing up so, so fast, and I don't want to miss any of that. So I am a stay-at-home mom that works from home, and the works from home is my business. So I do a lot of my business as part-time. I do a lot of slow entrepreneurship and intentional entrepreneurship, not into hustle culture at all. I'm not one of those boss babe girls or anything. That's just not me, not the season I'm in right now. I am focused on mainly my family, but I do sprinkle in my business here and there because it is something I am genuinely passionate about and I absolutely love doing. So that's why I do take the time, even during these precious moments of my children growing up, to run this business as well. And this podcast is just an addition to that. So, enough of my rambling about my business and everything. Um, I kind of really wanted to get into why I became a doula and my home birth stories from there. So, my first birth was a hospital birth. I got into it just like most people do, the mainstream way. You think that you call up your local OB and set up an appointment to confirm the pregnancy, and then you work with them from there all the way up until the birth. And that's exactly what I did. I knew about home birth and it did intrigue me, but I didn't know that there was so much more to it. I just thought it was another place that women gave birth, and it wasn't very different from the hospital. That is what I had initially thought. So when I decided to do the hospital birth, I thought I could just have a home birth at the hospital. But that wasn't the case because I didn't know any better at that time. So I went in to the hospital because my water had been leaking, and they told me they wanted to check if it was actually my water that had been broken or not. And they confirmed that it was, but they also told me I was only 1 centimeter dilated and that my OB wanted to start me on Pitocin. They did not word this as a question. They did not ask me in any way if this is what I wanted. They didn't tell me if there were any side effects to it, if there were risks, nothing. They just kind of made the statement, your OB wants to put you on Pitocin. And so, me not knowing much, I agreed and I said, okay. In reality, I should have been sent home, but that wasn't the case because I didn't know any better at that time. And so they put me on Pitocin. I was only 1 centimeter dilated, like I said, and those contractions were just the most painful thing I have ever felt in my entire life. Right away, I immediately was like, this is why so many women choose to get the epidural because this is painful. But little did I know it was the Pitocin doing that. It wasn't really natural labor that was giving me these pains. And so I was really big on I did not want the epidural, more because I was terrified of the needle, still am, but honestly, that's what kept me from not getting the epidural the whole time is the fear of the epidural. I was more scared of that than the pain that I was going through, and essentially, I believe that helped me in the long run because if I got the epidural, I possibly could have gone through the rest of the cascade of interventions, and I'm lucky I didn't have to go through that. So I went with the Pitocin on all day, laid on my back all day, didn't eat or drink anything all day. I was in labor for over 24 hours. It was maybe like 25 hours. So I was absolutely miserable. And all of that happening, my OB would walk in and tell me, "You sure you don't want that epidural? That epidural is going to help you. You'll be able to fall asleep with the epidural." Kind of like showing a kid a candy bar, saying, like, you want it. And I was really upset about that because I had told her at every single appointment that I had with her, I didn't want the epidural no matter what. And she still brought it up at my birth. So that really, really got to me in my head. And luckily, I had a nurse who came in and was like, "If you don't want the epidural, you don't need it." There's so many women who give birth without the epidural every day. If you want to do it, you can do it. And I always call her like my little angel doula because I didn't have a doula. I didn't know what a doula was at that point, but she really came in like a doula would have and grounded me back into my why reason of why I didn't want an epidural. And I was like, okay, you're right. I can do this. And right after that, the OBs came in again and she was like, "Well, your water has been broken for 24 hours now. If you don't give birth to this baby soon, you're going to have to go back to an emergency C-section." And in my mind, it like flipped a switch, and I was like, "Nope, that's not happening today." Because then all of a sudden my body just opened up and I was 10 centimeters and ready to push. And he came out in not even 15 minutes because I knew I was not going to have a C section at that time. So I got everything I wanted essentially. I didn't want the epidural. I didn't want a C section. And none of those things happened. So I should have felt overjoyed about all of that after the fact. And I had my baby in my arms, and everything should have been blissful and perfect and amazing. And I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like I had accomplished anything. I didn't feel empowered at all. And I didn't feel fulfilled at all. So that was something that I kind of did a little bit more digging into of why. And so I decided for the next one, I wanted to have a home birth because the hospital just wasn't the birth experience that I was looking for. And before I had gotten pregnant again, I found out about doulas and what they were, what they did. And I met a doula who was local to me. So as soon as I got pregnant, I texted her and I was like, "Hey, you're going to be my doula because I'm pregnant." And from then on, we just started planning and preparing for my home birth. She taught me all about physiological birth, and it really kind of clicked in my mind why my hospital birth was the way that it was and why I didn't feel at all accomplished at the end. It kind of just all came together and clicked. And that made me really, really passionate about being able to maybe teach other women what I now know because I felt that not a lot of women know about this. We aren't taught about physiologic birth. We're taught the mainstream birth system, medicalized birth, all of that. And so I had my amazing home birth, and I decided right afterwards to become a doula and get certified. Literally, I was in the first month of postpartum sitting on my laptop doing my online certificate with a baby, either baby wearing or nursing or something. My baby was on me while I was certifying to become a doula. But I do want to backtrack just a little bit and tell you guys a little bit about that home birth story. So I did end up choosing to do a free birth. I did have midwife care up until maybe 28 weeks. And then I decided to have a wild pregnancy from then on and birth unassisted. I did have my doula there and my husband and my mom. And that birth kind of started maybe the night before. It was 11:30ish. I can't remember the exact time, but I noticed my mucus plug had came out and I texted my doula. I was like, "Hey, I think this is my mucus plug. Things might be happening." We both knew that wasn't a for sure sign, but it could be a sign. She was like, "Let me know if anything else happens from here." And so I went to sleep and then I got woken up by a contraction. Wasn't anything crazy. It was just a small little contraction here, and I was like, "Whoa, that was different than the Braxton Hicks I've been feeling, but we'll see." So I went back to sleep, and then the next time it woke me up again, it was maybe like 7 in the morning already. So I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna stay up for the rest of the day." I'm not an early morning person at all, so 7 o'clock was early for me, but I just stayed up because I was like, "Let's see where these contractions go." And all morning, my contractions would be like 20 minutes apart, then 10 minutes apart, and then they would go to 5 minutes, then they would go to 20 minutes again, then they would go back down to 10, 15, 7. So they never just went down in order, like how most people say their contractions get closer and closer together. Mine weren't doing that at all. Mine were just kind of all over the place. So in my head, I just kept thinking, this is not actual labor. I'm not going to give birth today. Like, this is all fake. It's prodromal labor, something like that. So I kept in my head, deny, 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 over and over again. It's not real labor. And then by maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I started to notice that when my son would come up to me during a contraction, I couldn't handle him anymore. As in, like, I needed somebody else to be there to kind of help care for him. Like, I would have to sit down, actually, like, focus. I wasn't able to talk, things like that. And I think that's the moment where I was like, okay, this is really happening. This is real labor. This is not fake labor. And so I told everybody, okay, I think this is real. Time to come over. Like, get everybody over here that needs to be over here. And let's go. This is starting. And everyone got to my house. I think maybe like my mom got here around 4 o'clock-ish, 4:30-ish. And then my doula got here around 5:30 because I knew I wanted my mom here before anything, just to kind of see if things started slowing down or anything like that. I didn't call everybody over yet, but when she got here, things were still going the same and picking up. And then I started not being able to talk even more. But I was managing them really good. So I think that's what kind of in my head made me think I'm not sure when it's going to happen because I was really, really good at managing them. And the pain level was like non existent, it was just intense. And so I finally had my doula come over. And when she came over, she was just like observing me, watching what I was doing. And we were all like, okay, I think it's time to kind of go up to my room where I wanted to give birth and set up like the whole tub. So we got up to my birth space. Everyone started setting up the tub, filling it up, and my doula came over with like my birth affirmation cards and was asking me like which ones were kind of like popping out at me that I wanted to be hung up. And I was reading through them. Little did I know in that exact moment I was going through transition. And I really, really think that those affirmations, reading them during transition, helped me pull through transition so easily. But all of a sudden, after reading them, I got this urge to kind of grab something. Like it was really instinctual to just like grab on to something. So I asked my husband to help me onto our bed, and I grabbed onto the bed frame. So I was on my hands and knees, and then my hands were on the bed frame. And as soon as I did that, my water broke and she started coming out, literally coming out. And so I screamed for everybody to come over and help me because I still was fully clothed because I had not thought she was coming yet. I thought it was going to take a long time for her to come. Maybe later on at like 9 o'clock at night or something was when I thought she was coming. But she had other plans. She said, nope, coming right now. And so everybody had to help me kind of take off my pants. And as soon as they took everything off, they were like, yep, she's right there. She's coming. Um, and not even like a second later, she just flew out of me. I didn't have to push her at all. Fetal ejection reflex took over and just pushed her out for me. She was born so easily. It still blows my mind to this day because it was fast and furious, but it was just so fast that it wasn't any issue at all. So yeah, she was here and everything was amazing, and I got that empowered feeling afterwards of what I had thought I was going to have after my first and didn't. So I immediately knew I had made the right choice and it was exactly where I needed to be and how birth was meant to be. Birth was meant to be in the comfort of your own home with people surrounding you who love and care for you and truly know you, not just some strangers who are trying to take over what your body already knows how to do. And I just felt so emotional that more women didn't experience this. So, like I said, I spent my postpartum doing my doula certification. I started taking on clients and attending births. I was about a year postpartum when I found out I was pregnant for the third time. She was very much a shock, but we were very happy. We knew we still had wanted more kids, so it wasn't in the cards for us. We knew eventually it would happen. We just didn't think it would happen so soon. And with hers, what was really special is we had decided not to find out her gender until she was born. So we had no idea the whole time, except we kind of had a little idea because my husband's grandma was on hospice during the time that we had found out we were pregnant. And she actually told my husband's brother that she saw a little girl and he asked her if it was my daughter that I already had. And she said, no, it wasn't her. I know what she looks like. It was a different little girl. And from that story on, I knew just deep down in my gut, I knew she was talking about my baby that I was pregnant with and that she had met her. She was a girl. And so when she was born, it kind of solidified all of that, which was really, really amazing in knowing that she got to meet her, even though she passed away before she was born. Her birth was really, really transformative for me because it was very different from my first home birth, but it was the exact birth that I had manifested, which I thought was completely insane, but I was so happy about it. I was not mad about it at all. Her birth started almost exactly at midnight. And what's funny is the day before, we had all got sick with the flu in our house. So I texted my doula, hey, just in case anything happens, we have the flu. So just so you know, we're all sick. Whatever you want to do with that info, you're free to do. Um, but if I go into labor or anything, if you want to wear a mask around us, or if you don't want to come anymore because you don't want to get sick, whatever, it's your choice, right? She didn't care at all. She was like, I'm not scared of the flu, so that's fine, but hopefully you don't go into labor. Well, that night I went into labor. It was, like I said, midnight. Um, I started having some of my mucus plug again came out. I know it's not always a sign of labor happening right then and there, but for me, it was a sign last time. So I was a little bit more cautious about that. And so I texted my doula, hey, this is happening. And she's like, well, are you having any contractions? As I was texting her, no, I'm not having any contractions. I get a contraction. So I had to delete that message and say, I just had one right now. Um, and then from there, I kind of already knew with how fast my daughter had been born at home that I wanted the tub to be set up right away because I did not want to miss a water birth this time around. And my husband started setting that up literally not even 30 minutes into me going into early labor. And he set up the whole tub and everything. He got it set up in maybe an hour. Um, and I started having like my mom come over, my doula come over right after that. I think, yeah, the tub was already all set up when they got here. And so once they were all here, I got into the tub. It was maybe 2:30 when I got into the tub. That moment of getting into the tub and just being there, being able to relax, I can't even describe it because one, it was the middle of the night. Two, me and my doula had talked about exactly how I wanted my birth to be. So she knew to put on these hypnobirthing hymns in the background playing. She knew to put my essential oil diffuser on, and the smell of like clary sage just filled the room. It was so silent. Everyone was quiet and just like there holding space for me while I managed all of my contractions in the water by myself. And when I tell you that is the most peaceful I've ever felt, it's insane because so many people are like, how do you feel peaceful during labor? Isn't it like chaotic and crazy and you're feeling pain and you're feeling this? And for me, it wasn't like that at all. I felt completely pain free in there, and I had never felt more at peace than that moment. It did not feel like I was in there for a long time at all, but I was in there for more than an hour doing that. Um, and so it's really crazy, like where your mind goes during labor. You go into this labor land, you're out of your body. And then all of a sudden, I felt myself kind of come back into my body, and my instincts just kind of kicked in. And I looked at my doula and I said, I'm about to go into transition right now. And she's like, okay, let's go. And so I called my husband over because I knew I was going to need him during transition. And like I said to her, transition had started. And right away, I knew instinctively that like I could feel her coming down. Didn't know she was a her at that time, but I could feel her coming down. And again, I didn't have to push, my body was pushing itself, but I kind of had to help it in a way where I would take my breaths and push down my breath to her to help her go down. And she really needed that extra assistance because she didn't come out as easily as my first daughter had, where with my first home birth, she just like slid out. Didn't need to do anything with her. With this one, it was a little bit more intentional where like my breathing was going down and helping her, but I was not pushing, my body was pushing. So it was really interesting to feel that because I knew I was helping her, but I wasn't helping her in the way most people think that they are during labor with like the pushing part. And so she came in like again 15 minutes. I am very lucky and get to push out my babies in like a super fast amount of time. But she came out, and my mom actually was able to grab her and give her to me. And then I was able to see if she was a boy or girl, and she was a girl. And so that was really a special moment, just finding out that she was a girl and knowing that my intuition was right and that the whole story beforehand was true, that she had seen a little girl. And that was really special. That was my most recent home birth about a year ago now. And yeah, I just really, really love home birth stories and being able to share them with other women. I feel like listening to other women's experiences is really good in the whole prep work of having a home birth. It's something that I utilized for my home births was I would listen to home birth stories every day to kind of prepare for all the case scenarios that I was listening to. And I also learned a lot from those women. There's a lot of the different things that can happen during birth. There's a lot of different situations, and hearing everyone talk about their own unique situation is really helpful in learning and educating yourself on what can possibly happen. And so I really hope you guys can use this podcast as a tool in your home birth prep or your education. And if you're looking for even more guidance in planning your home birth, please reach out to me. I am going to be hosting a free live workshop next week on January 30th. It is called The Path to Your Empowering Home Birth. So if you are listening to this when it comes out, or even within this next week, you'll be able to go ahead and grab a seat on that workshop where I kind of lay out the entire path for you to have your empowering home birth. That's why I called it that. But all these links will be down below, so you can grab a seat if you'd like to join my free live workshop. And if you want even more guidance than that, just feel free to reach out to me. I post a lot of Ask Me Anything text boxes on Instagram, so you could always go there. Usually I do it on Saturdays. So if you have questions you'd like to ask me, that's the place to go. But thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoy this podcast moving forward, filled with so many home birth stories that I have lined up. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave me a review, and we'll be back next time.